Welcome to Final Moments, where history doesn't fade. Every day, stories end, but some leave behind legacies too powerful to be forgotten. Today, we remember the lives that shaped politics, music, science, and security, people who stood in the face of danger, challenged authority, and redefined their field. From the Secret Service agent who stopped an assassin to the sportswriter who took us behind the scenes, these are the final moments of those who made history. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Final Moments, because while life is fleeting, the stories we tell will last forever. Now let's get started. Number 1. Larry Buendorf. Larry Buendorf wasn't a household name, but in the world of presidential security, his actions defined the very essence of vigilance. On September 5th, 1975, in Sacramento, California, he became the last line of defense between President Gerald Ford and a would-be assassin. Born in Welsh, Minnesota in 1937, Buendorf grew up in a small town where his father managed a furniture store. He excelled in school, even serving as junior class president before earning a degree in business from Mankato State College in 1959. But office work wasn't in his future. He had a calling, one that led him to the skies as a U.S. Navy pilot during the Vietnam War. On that fateful day in 1975, Ford had chosen to walk instead of taking his limousine. The president had a habit of embracing the public, even at the risk of his own safety. Buendorf, positioned at Ford's right shoulder, was scanning the crowd when he saw movement. Lynette Squeaky Fromm, draped in a red robe, moving toward them with a Colt 45 semi-automatic pistol. The gun was rising fast. Buendorf, a former Navy pilot turned Secret Service agent, was positioned at Ford's right shoulder. His years of training had instilled a constant state of heightened awareness. That's when we saw it. Lynette Squeaky Fromm, draped in a red robe, moving toward the crowd with a Colt 45 semi-automatic pistol. The gun was rising fast. Instinct took over. I see it coming, and I step in front of him, not sure what it was, other than that it was coming up pretty fast, Buendorf later recalled. He shouted one word, gun, and within a second, his hand was on hers, twisting the weapon away. The hammer had been cocked, 4 bullets loaded in the magazine, but none in the chamber. If she had chambered a round, he admitted, it would have gone through me and the president. Ford never broke stride. As Secret Service agents subdued Fromm, the president continued with his day as planned, meeting Governor Jerry Brown before flying back to Washington. Later, his wife Betty greeted him with a simple, almost obvious question. So, how was your day? Buendorf remained Ford's protector until the end of his presidency, later serving in the U.S. Olympic Committee until his retirement in 2018. He was more than just an agent. He was a man who, for one critical second, held history in his hands. He passed away in 2025 at the age of 87, leaving behind a legacy of quiet, unwavering courage. Number 2. Ron Nessen. Ron Nessen's tenure as White House press secretary came at one of the most turbulent moments in American political history. A seasoned journalist, he stepped into the role in 1974, replacing Gerald Terhorst after the shock resignation of President Nixon and Ford's controversial pardon that followed. Before politics, Nessen made his mark as a war correspondent. He covered Vietnam for NBC News and was seriously wounded by grenade fragments near Placo in 1966. His career took him from reporting Apollo space flights to covering presidential campaigns, giving him a sharp, unfiltered perspective on Washington's inner workings. At the White House, Nessen pledged transparency in an administration desperate to restore credibility. If I lie or misled you, I think you're justified in questioning my continued usefulness in this job, he assured reporters. He increased press access to President Ford, felicitating interviews and briefings. But the honeymoon was short-lived. The press accused him of selectively withholding information rather than outright deception. His defense, I'm a Ron but not a Ziegler, a pointed contrast to Nixon's combative press secretary Ron Ziegler, infamous for stonewalling reporters during Watergate. Nessen's relationship with the press deteriorated further during Ford's foreign visits. In Vladivostok, after a summit with Soviet leader Brezhnev, he told journalists he had been dazzled by the arms control agreement, a remark that did little to endear him. On a 1975 trip to China, American correspondents complained that Chinese officials were more forthcoming than Nessen himself. Despite the friction, he left a lasting cultural imprint. In 1976, he became the first political figure to host Saturday Night Live, a move meant to soften Ford's image. The president even appeared in a pre-recorded segment delivering the iconic line, "Live from New York, it's Saturday night." After the Ford administration, Nessen returned to journalism and public relations, later serving as a juror for the Peabody Awards. He chronicled his experiences in "It Sure Looks Different on the Inside" and a memoir, "Making the News, Taking the News." Ron Nessen died in 2025 at the age of 90, leaving behind a legacy marked by the tension between transparency and loyalty, a balancing act that remains at the heart of the press secretary's role. Number 3. John Feinstein. Born on July 28, 1956 in New York City, John Feinstein's career was defined by relentless curiosity, an obsession with detail, and an unmatched ability to bring the inner workings of sports to life. Over more than 4 decades, he produced 44 books, countless columns, and a legacy as one of the most influential sports writers of his time. His breakthrough came in 1986 with A Season on the Brink, an unfiltered, deeply personal chronicle of Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers. The book's raw access to Knight's volatile brilliance set a new standard for sports journalism. Knight himself, furious about how his profanity-laced tirades were exposed, refused to speak to Feinstein for years. Yet in later reflections, Feinstein credited Knight's openness as the reason he was able to shape the rest of his career on his own terms. That career spanned far beyond basketball. A Good Walk Spoiled captured the psychological and financial pressures of the PGA Tour. Living on the Black dissected the mental fortitude of elite pitchers. Hard Courts took readers inside the professional tennis circuit, and The First Major illuminated the fierce rivalries of the Ryder Cup. Each book was an immersion, a product of exhaustive reporting that never compromised nuance for drama. Feinstein's journalistic roots were equally significant. Starting at the Washington Post in 1977, he covered everything from police beats to college football before cementing himself as a sports columnist. His last column, a piece on Tom Izzo, was published the day he died, proof that his work ethic never wavered. Beyond print, he was a staple on NPR, ESPN, and the Golf Channel. Even in casual conversations, his depth of knowledge and storytelling ability made him an authoritative voice in the industry. Feinstein was demanding both of his subjects and himself. His former agent, Esther Newberg, remarked that he couldn't help himself when it came to reporting, even as health issues piled up. His legacy is one of relentless pursuit of access, of truth, of the real stories behind the games that we watch. John Feinstein passed away on March 13, 2025 at the age of 69. He died of natural causes at his brother's home in McLean, Virginia. Number 4. Geraint Jarman. Few figures shaped modern Welsh music like Geraint Jarman. A musician, poet, and television producer, Jarman's career spanned nearly 6 decades, fusing folk, punk, rock, and reggae into the Welsh cultural landscape. From his early days as a songwriter for Heather Jones to his groundbreaking work with Acclaimed, his music was both a reflection of his heritage and a challenge to its boundaries. Born in Denbigh in 1950 but raised in Cardiff, Jarman found early inspiration in the rich poetic tradition of Wales. His work drew from sources as diverse as Rastafarian reggae, European literature, and the defiant spirit of punk. When John Peel championed his music in the late 1970s, it wasn't merely an endorsement, it was an introduction of Welsh language rock to a global audience. His 1976 debut, Go Baith Mawr Ganrif, was a statement, an album steeped in tradition, yet unmistakably modern. Over the next decade, he released 9 albums where he reimagined the Welsh national anthem through waves of distorted guitar. But Jarman was a cultural architect. In the 1980s, he co-produced Video 9, a pioneering Welsh language music program on S4C that became a launchpad for future legends like Super Furry Animals and Catatonia. Gruff Rhys once described Jarman as a bridge. He severed ties with Celtic folk and paved the way for a new wave of Welsh artists. Jarman's later work remained adventurous. He released 2 full reggae albums in the 2010s, proving that reinvention was a lifelong pursuit. His legacy isn't just in the music, it's in the artists he inspired, the language he championed, and the culture he transformed. Geraint Jarman passed away on 3rd March 2025, but his influence echoes in every chord of Welsh rock today. Number 5. Richard Fortey. Fortey wasn't just a scientist, he was a storyteller, unraveling the history of life on Earth with an unparalleled ability to bridge the gap between academia and the public. A school field trip to Pembrokeshire in the early 1960s led Richard Fortey to his first trilobite, an encounter that would shape a career spanning decades. Born in Ealing, West London in 1946, Fortey grew up with a deep appreciation for the natural world. His childhood was spent exploring the countryside near Newbury, where his father Frank, a fishing tackle shop owner, taught him about the rhythms of nature. His mother Margaret had aspirations beyond their trade, instilling in him a love for literature. His academic path led him to King's College, Cambridge, where he specialized in geology, earning a first-class degree before obtaining a PhD and DSc. However, personal tragedy struck just before his scholarship exams. His father died in a car accident, forcing him to navigate his academic journey amidst upheaval. As a paleontologist at London's Natural History Museum, Fortey dedicated himself to the study of trilobites and graptolites, refining the scientific understanding of their systematics, evolution, and ecology. His contributions, over 250 published papers, ranged from Orthovision paleogeography to the evolutionary divergence of arthropods. His work was as meticulous as it was expansive, revealing how molecular data and the fossil record intersect to illuminate the deep past. His influence extended far beyond the scientific community. Fortey's books, such as Trilobite and Life, an unauthorized biography, brought paleontology to a global audience, weaving intricate science with literary flair. Bill Bryson considered him without peer among science writers, a testament to his ability to render deep time comprehensible. Recognition followed. Fellow of the Royal Society, holder of the Michael Faraday Prize, and in 2023, an OBE for services to paleontology. Yet accolades never dulled his curiosity. Even in retirement, he was found rearing fungus gnats at home, sharing findings with entomologists. Fortey passed away in March 2025, leaving behind his wife Jackie, their 3 children, and a lasting legacy of discovery and storytelling. His books, papers, and broadcasts ensure that, much like the fossils that he studied, his influence will endure for generations to come. Number 6. Alison Halford. Today, we're diving into the remarkable yet turbulent story of Alison Halford, a woman who shattered glass ceilings but paid a heavy price for it. From being Britain's high-ranking female police officer to a fierce legal fighter, her journey is nothing short of inspiring. Alison Halford was born in 1940 in England. She grew up in a time when opportunities for women, especially in law enforcement, were limited. But from an early age, Alison was determined to carve her own path. Friends recall her as fiercely independent, intelligent, and deeply committed to justice. Alison joined the police force in the 1960s when the idea of a female officer in leadership was almost unheard of, but she quickly climbed the ranks, proving herself through sheer skill and determination. By the 1980s, she had become Britain's first female assistant chief constable. However, success didn't come easy. Despite her qualifications, Alison faced resistance from her male colleagues. Promotions were stalled, opportunities denied, and rumors swirled. The police culture at the time was deeply ingrained with sexism, and Alison was forced to fight battles on multiple fronts. In the early 1990s, Alison Halford made headlines not for her policing, but for taking legal action against the very institution she served. She filed a sex discrimination lawsuit claiming she had been overlooked for promotions due to gender bias. Then, things took an even darker turn. Alison discovered that her phone had been tapped by the police. Imagine dedicating your life to an institution only to find out that they were spying on you. This revelation shook the country, leading to a massive scandal. The legal battle and media frenzy took a serious toll on Alison's health and personal life. Alison Halford passed away in 2025, leaving behind a legacy of courage and determination. Even in her final years, she remained outspoken about justice and fairness, never wavering in her principles.